What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/IDoWorkHereLady. Alright, this story's called Arrested Because I Do Work Here. Some parts of this posting are going to be difficult to explain for reasons that will become apparent as you read through it, and a lot of details have been left out for obvious reasons. Well over 20 years ago now, I was working for a UK government department as part of a team that dealt with what would today be loosely called cybercrime and national security. I was not a civil servant, but I was employed jointly by the Ministry of Defense and the Home Office. It was a civilian organization, but we were all given military rank by the MOD, corresponding to the Army rank system, MOD being Ministry of Defense, by the way, and depending on how far our responsibility ran. My main job was finding things that the bad guys had tried to hide on computers and other electronic devices. Remember, this was well over 20 years ago, and things were a lot simpler in those days. Think Windows 3.1 and basic programming. And computer nerds were somewhat of a rare animal in those days. Real dinosaur days. No mobile phones even. And mobile walkie-talkies were the size, shape, and weight as the average household brick. When asked, members of the team regularly went out to gather evidence at various crime scenes. We worked alongside numerous police forces throughout the UK and could be called out anywhere, from Cornwall and the Channel Islands in the south to the Outer Hebrides, in the far north, all at a moment's notice. One day, we got a call from the London Metropolitan Police, Met, to attend a raid on a property in North London that was to take place very early the following morning. I don't know how it happened, but I was the only member of the team available, so I got assigned to go with the Met and take possession of any computers that might be found during the raid and hold on to them for continuity reasons in case things found on said computers were ever used in court. For security reasons, I was confined to the office overnight until I was taken to the address the following morning. I was never very good at sleeping in or on an office chair, so it was not exactly a restful or comfortable night. On arrival at the address of the raid, I am the only one there not in uniform, but I do don a white coverall garment and plastic gloves and overshoes. I enter the building and am escorted to a room with a number of computers, along with 1 or 2 Commodore and 4 or more Spectrum ZX computers. This will give you an idea of the time period if you know computer history. If not, just Google the names. And actually, I know about Commodore computers, and so I'm thinking like early 80s. So fact check me if I'm wrong. Actually, no, do it regardless and tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, there was a tower PC at the scene, something very rare in those days. The tower PC had 2 rather large hard drives. This was very rare and obviously very expensive as well, so something of interest. I was left on my own to do what it was I was there to do and took out the tools to do the job. I had just started to dismantle the tower computer when a voice from behind me shouted, "Oi you! Step away from that thing!" I was a bit confused by the approach and attitude, so I shuffled round in a kneeling position and looked at what I saw was a Met police constable standing in the doorway. I said something to the effect that I was removing the hard drives, and he just shouted again, "I said step away from that thing! You are interfering with evidence!" Without trying to get up, I tried to explain again what I was doing. With hindsight, I should have said who I was rather than what I was doing. Next thing I know, I am lying face down and the constable was handcuffing me and yelling for support. Didn't use the term backup in those days. Hadn't seen all those US cop shows on the TV yet. So there I was, face down, wearing the same white coverall suit with the same plastic gloves and overshoes that the constable had on, but I was the one wearing handcuffs and apparently under arrest. Eventually, it seemed like a long time, I'd never been handcuffed before, so that would have made it appear longer in my mind. But eventually, a police superintendent, or super, appeared on the scene, saw who I was, and turned to face the arresting constable. He looked him up and down slowly. I shall never forget the conversation that followed.
"And you are?" "PCZ123.
Changed for obvious reasons.
"And what is all the row about?" "I've arrested a civilian who is impersonating a police officer and tampering with evidence, sir."
"And he is? What is his name? What is he doing?"
"Don't know, sir. So I'm tampering with that thing."
Points to the tower computer.
"I told him to stop and step away, but he refused, so I arrested him, handcuffed him to save evidence."
"And who is he?"
"Don't know, sir. Just a civilian."
"Well, let me tell you then. That civilian is the representative of government department, and his job is to secure evidence that his department is going to examine for the Met. Furthermore, his rank outranks me. He is the equivalent of a chief superintendent. I am just a superintendent. What rank are you, constable?" I was released by a very embarrassed constable and helped to my feet. The constable was then told to guard the door and to just stay there, not to move, and not let anyone interfere with what I was doing. I finished the job, got all the evidence bagged and tagged, as you would say today. We never used that phrase back then, and left. I thanked the constable very politely as I left with all the evidence and was driven back to my office, where I logged everything and placed it in a secure holding room until I could get at least 8 hours sleep so that I would be fresh for work when I started on the hard drives and tapes I had retrieved. Yes, computers use cassette tapes for data and program storage way back then. To conclude, I found what the Met were looking for in and on the computers, the tapes and discs, plus loads of other stuff the Met did not know of before the raid. The Met charged him and a couple of others with numerous offenses under the Defense of the Realm Act. Note: our department never charged anyone with any offense. The Met had a branch dedicated to this and always took over the case when it went to court, regardless of where the offenses took place. Whenever possible, our department was never even mentioned during any trial. In fact, my boss's boss was the first throughout the department's history to reveal that the department actually existed. She was the first director to reveal her name to the press. Nowadays, the department even has a telephone openly available in telephone directories, but that is by the way. Anyway, the outcome was that the bad guys all got to go to trial and each got a long sentence for what was basically endangering the state, plus some extra smuggling and trafficking offenses that got taken into consideration. As a bonus, the day following the raid, I got a full 12+ hours sleep in a comfortable bed and was woken the following morning by the girlfriend, who was later to be my wife, with a kiss and the best cup of cappuccino coffee I had ever tasted. That is the story of how I got arrested for doing my job as instructed and got thrown to the ground and handcuffed despite saying to the constable at the time, "But public officer, I do work here." Okay, first of all, very freaking good story. Thank you so much for sharing. What's their name? I need to scroll up. His name is user Another Gary. Well, that is another Gary that I do not hate because they are good storytellers. And by another, it's the one Gary I don't hate because they're very good storytellers. Other Garys I don't hate for other reasons, but this is a very good storyteller that also happens to be a Gary. Another Gary. This story's called A Woman Can't Do the Job? Wanna bet? I was the head of the maintenance department for a hotel complex. Rooms, multiple buildings, restaurant, meeting rooms, and conference center, offices, lobby, and front desk. My crew had to handle everything from minor furniture repair to HVAC, plumbing, drywall repair. If it broke, We fixed it or repaired it. The busier the complex got, the more work there was for us. A guy stopped coming in, so I finally called his home and was informed by his wife that he was in jail. He'd gone into the city on Friday night, gotten drunk and into a fight, and she had had enough and left his ass sitting in jail. I felt bad for the guy, but I have to get the work done, and I got the impression from his wife that this was not the first time he'd done this. I go to the office and ask for the applications for maintenance and was handed a stack of applications. The ones that looked like the person built skyscrapers single-handed, I knew were a waste of my time. I selected 4 that looked promising. The first one called was no longer interested, they'd gotten a full-time position. The second, third, and fourth were set up with interviews. The first applicant that came in was a 20-year-old kid who showed up in a torn t-shirt, oversized ripped jeans, reeking of weed with his girlfriend in tow. I mean, who brings their girlfriend into the interview? The next applicant was a young African-American woman who had graduated from a trade school with impressive education and practical skills who wanted the chance to gain experience. The last applicant never showed. I hired the young woman without hesitation. She showed up on time, dressed to work with her tool pouch, and I handed out assignments and went over procedures with her, and we did her paperwork. I walked around with her for her first repairs. Our hotel would give us a list of rooms that had checked out and guests or housekeeping had listed an issue. It might be light out, a faucet dripping, or a noisy AC. The conference center had to replace bulbs in the overhead projector because users would leave it on when they went to lunch and the bulbs would overheat. Before entering a room that was supposed to be checked out, we had a policy that we would knock on the door. If no answer, unlock the door, open it, crack, and announce "Maintenance" in case the guest had run back into the bathroom or fallen asleep. Then open the door fully and switch on all lights and get started on our work orders. The young lady was good. She learned the procedure after being showed once, got in, got to work, knew exactly what tool to use for each repair, and knocked them out, and cleaned up after herself. I let her know housekeeping appreciates that if it's a big mess, call them and let them know since management doesn't want us for an hour doing housekeeping work. So a paper towel or a rag under a dripping pipe, tighten the leak and make sure it isn't leaking, and taking the paper towel gets you points with housekeeping. The girls, along with housekeeping employees, and didn't have to be constantly supervised and knew what she was doing. I was happy. The next day was not the same. My male crew all had their favorite centerfold inside of their locker. Since they were not visible to guests or housekeeping, I did not care. My new female mechanic did not care. However, when I walked in the next morning with my cup of coffee, the first thing I saw was all centerfolds were on the outside of the locker doors. My female mechanic arrived next, and I assured her I'd deal with this crap as soon as the idiots got in. I was not happy, and that meant they were not going to be happy either. But she asked if I'd let it slide and let her handle it. I asked what she had in mind, and I loved her plan. The guys came in snickering like schoolboys who pulled a prank, and I didn't say a thing. The next day, however, their lockers still had their centerfolds in place, only with the addition of a playgirl centerfold of a very muscular male. I had a group of 6 men ranging in age 22 to 50, whining like school kids who learned that they were gonna have to go to summer school. They were complaining about how disgusting that was. I let them know that if they wanted to play games, she was entitled to play as well, and suggested they grow up and do their jobs, since this woman had some skills that some of them lacked. She worked for me for 3 more years, and when she left, I gave her a glowing letter of recommendation, citing her technical skills as well as her dependability. She was on time and on task without causing any drama. Once the men realized that she was good, she taught some of the younger guys some tricks to troubleshoot our ice machines, and even the old mechanics who thought women couldn't handle this kind of work eventually came to respect her skills. My daddy taught me a long time ago to listen. You might be surprised what you can learn from people others don't consider having any worthwhile input. Well, your daddy taught you well, because that is a very sweet story. You gave an unsuspecting individual a chance and they shined, which is always a good story. Given that she's a woman, she's already a bit of an underdog in her line of work, and that's an inspiring story. And she handled that whole centerfold thing very well. She let the guys upset themselves with their own hypocrisy. Beautiful stuff. Alright, this story's called You Can't Do Anything, You're Just a Passenger Like Me. I've posted in IDoWorkHereLady before about how some girls thought I was following them from the station. Sadly, I've had another encounter. It was my day off and I went to my local station to travel to see a friend, fully masked obviously. I was waiting by the rear end of where the train would arrive. As it had covered seating out of the way, I heard a group of people yelling and screaming, and I tried to ignore it. They continued to get louder, but one girl in particular was obviously the ringleader. After a few minutes, the train arrived and we all got on. I was in the very last seat at the back of the train. The ringleader started getting aggressive to a fellow passenger for no reason, and my ears pricked up. I stood up and told her to calm down, that she's being an idiot, and to just let others be. That was obviously the wrong thing to do. She came close to me and started yelling at me. "What are you gonna do, big man? Huh? You gonna cry to mommy? You gonna find the police? Huh?" She obviously thought she was untouchable. I said, "Look at that screen. What does it say?" Scrolling LED screen that repeats in writing what has been said over the loudspeaker. She looked at it and said, "So what? What you gonna do?" I replied to her, "Nothing, just wanted you to look directly at the CCTV camera so there is a clear shot of you." She got angry. "Oh, you think you're a big man, huh? You think you're gonna get the police involved?" I pretended to think about it, then said, "You know what? That's exactly what I'm gonna do." I then used the key I have on my house keychain that accesses pretty much all UK railway property and entered the rear cab, where I quickly closed the door, used the cab-to-cab communication to speak to the driver to let them know what was going on and to ask for BTP, or British Transport Police, assistance. I then came out, told her that BTP were on their way and the train won't be moving until they arrive. She didn't believe me at first, but then after the train wasn't leaving the next station, I could see she was getting a bit frustrated. When they did arrive eventually, I gave them my work ID and side of the story, and they were all taken off. Well, that must have been pretty satisfying. Don't mess with people when they're just chilling. Just let people chill. Mind your business. Or you might get, British toilet paper to haul you off. That's never a good time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.